That's what he did over a 3-year period. The proof of pudding lies in eating, they say. So when I commenced my practice at the end of the 3 years,
She did her fellowship training in pediatric immunology at the renowned B.J. Wadia Hospital for Children, Mumbai, where she received advanced training in the diagnosis and management of inborn errors of immunity.
Good morning, everyone. I must say, Guru Bhyo Namaha, with so many stalwarts sitting here, and Dr. Ramaswamy himself being such a stalwart, and he honoring his own teacher. It's a privilege, and with humble submission, I would accept this. And I'm really privileged to be standing here to deliver this oration. I'm thankful to Dr. Ramaswamy and the entire Masonic management team to having given me this opportunity. Dear trustees, colleagues, friends, for coming few minutes, let us celebrate the science that defends us unseen, the immune system, to learn from life's unforeseen experiments. So we are going to next few minutes learn from the life's unseen experiments, the immune system. Rare diseases, though infrequent in number, are experiments of nature that reveal the rules by which immunity is built, balanced, and sometimes broken. It gives us a power to map molecular pathways, redefine clinical paradigms. It is a science guided by curiosity, compassion, and humility to learn from those we seek to heal. With that, we move forward. When I look forward and I search Charaka Samhita to see if there was anything associated with immunology in Charaka Samhita, I noticed that Charaka Samhita describes immune system as Bala, an internal factor that is responsible for vitality of life. The one which we are born with is an innate immune response called Sahaja Bala. One which we acquire through judicious use of external factors is Yukti Krita Bala. And Yukti Krita Bala is something which we are giving to our children by means of vaccinations. Kala Krita Bala is something which develops over a period of time. During the day, it can change. That is, we can now see that neutrophils can undergo cyclicity. Morning neutrophil count can be different, evening neutrophil count can be different. So, times of the day, seasons and stages of life that we come into. The facts of Ayurvedic therapeutics revolve around something to boost the Bala, which is called Rasayana. And then I looked to see if there was something called genetic disease in Charaka Samhita, and gene was called Bija, genetic defect was called Bija Dosha. Effect associated with part of the gene was called Bija Bhaga Dosha. Probably it is a monoallelic and a biallelic defects which we are seeing now, and parts associated with subparts of gene is Bija Bhaga Avyaya Dosha, probably a copy number variant and single nucleotide polymorphisms. We were pretty rich then, we are rich now also. So as I said, during the formative stage, it is the tolerance, the pathogen responses which we come across, which builds up our immunity as a child. When we are an adult or an adolescent, a homeostasis is established. We have memory T cells which plateau. We have an good immune response and immune tolerance. We can identify the cells which are going to cause damage to us and can be culled. We have immune surveillance for tumors, and we have immune surveillance for viral activation also. So I always say, if there is an adolescent coming with an autoimmunity, it has to be investigated. As we grow old, we are in the phase of an immune senescence. The entire milieu is inflammatory and the immune tolerance reduces, and therefore there are chances of immune dysregulation. So the modern medicine journey began somewhere in 1937 with Dr. Alfred Biscott, who described three brothers with so-called hereditary thrombopathia, that is the triad of Iscard syndrome. All the three children had something called eczema, recurrent infections, and bleed. And the bleed was secondary to low platelet count, which later came to be known as Viscott-Eldridge syndrome. In 1950, Glanzman was the first person to report of few children from a family who had severe absence of lymphoid tissue, that is, tonsils were absent, and those children had a very bad course. The discovery of A-gamma globulinemia by Colonel Troughton identified a child who had had 19 episodes of streptococcal pneumonia. He had an absent gamma globulin peak, and that later came to be known as what is called as X-linked A-gamma globulinemia. And in 1957, the Swedish pediatrician Jean Weiss said there can be children who can have a high globulin and can have a lymphadenopathy but still have immunological disease, which later came to be known as tonic granulomatous disease, not to withhold Swedish pediatrician Rolf Kostman, who first identified severe congenital neutropenia called as Kostman disease 10, now known as HAX1 mutation. So, inborn errors of immunity is moving beyond the paradigm of infection. It's no longer a pediatric bubble boy disease, but rather a complex condition which visits every infectious disease specialist, gastroenterologist, endocrinologist, and pulmonologist, and hematologist definitely, because NGS now has radically transformed clinical immunology, turning what was once a single umbrella diagnosis into hundreds of distinct molecular entities. This would be my flow of presentation, and what was once a primary immune deficiency has now got transformed into inborn errors of immunity with 30 to 35 new genes getting identified every year. We have total of 559 inherited phenotypic disorder of immunity, many waiting to be diagnosed. The immunological disorders have evolved over a period of time. The evolution of clinical, pathophysiological, diagnostic, and therapeutic modalities to manage in the IEI has been shown in this cartoon. If you see, the first half, initially it was thought that it is infection caused by broad range of pathogens. Now we have moved on to infection caused by narrow range of pathogens, hyperinflammatory and an autoimmune response associated with it, pathophysiology due to hematopoietic restricted cell autonomous defect has now become non-hematopoietic, that is extra hematopoietic defects. We will be talking about them in next few slides. The diagnosis was initially based on clinical and immunological abnormalities, and we always thought one gene can cause one phenotype or one disease. We are now in for a fix because one gene can cause many phenotypes and many genes can cause one phenotype. So has the treatment changed. So the changing concept is now nomenclature has changed from primary immune deficiency to inborn errors of immunity, and now we have phenotypes ranging from infections, polyautoimmunity, two or more than two autoimmunities, autoinflammation, they are periodic fever syndromes, sterile fevers, and we really don't have the diagnosis in them. They are autoinflammatory disorders which are a part of inborn errors of immunity. Malignancy, which is very close to my heart, this was my thesis also, malignancy associated with inborn errors of immunity, where there is a recurrence of malignancy, Richter's transformation, lineage switch, family history of malignancy is all inborn errors of immunity. We need to look for the monogenic disease. If the monogenic disorder is managed, I think the malignancy can come under control as well. We have phenocopies. Phenocopies are autoantibodies against the cytokines that are being produced in our body. Example, anti-interferon gamma autoantibody coming with recurrent tubercular infection. Need to treat with rituximab before the tuberculosis comes under control. Or autoantibody against factor VIII coming with acquired hemophilia. Bone marrow failure syndrome, inherited bone marrow failure syndrome has become a part of inborn error of immunity now. So phenotype-based classification of IEI, the concept changes. PID or IEI is likely to be the commonest disorder. Why am I saying so? Because initially there were conventional thought processes which said it's a rare disease, it's a familial disease. But now there is a novel thought process. It need not be rare, it can be common. It can be sporadic, it can be seen in adulthood. So the entire thought process has changed over a period of time, and we will see examples of each of them in the next few slides. So here we stand. The scale of discovery is we have 559 distinct disorders, 508 monogenic defects. This is IUIS classification, 10 tables with different genes identified in each table. So availability of NGS from 2015 in India has helped the identification of many of these genetic disorders. It has burst the myth that these are not seen in India. It is a myth. The risk is all the more with consanguinity and marriage within the community. The genome first approach, we have been able to identify more and more monogenic defects, and IUIS classification of monogenic disorders has doubled over the last few years. Many monogenic III can be cured with HSCT, while precision medicine for management of monogenic disease based on the pathophysiology has revolutionized survival. It has opened doors for collaboration with many international universities. One such example is the first case of MSMD was a case report, was the sample sent to Dr. Casanova from Wadia Hospital. That was the first IL-12 RB1 defect in the world. So the changing concept in IEI. IEI was once considered to be a familial or an inherited disorder, and now we know that autosomal dominant mutations can be de novo, they are not inherited. You can have an haploinsufficiency with variable penetrance in the family. One such example is a 6-year-old child who was referred from SGPGI Lucknow. He came to us with Evans phenotype. He had a trilineage hematopoiesis on bone marrow aspiration. While he was admitted with us, when he came with a TCK positive anemia and went on to develop polycythemia, so much so that we had to bloodlet him. And then, but the platelets would never respond to anything, even to IVIG or steroids. We had sent an NGS. Those days it used to take 6 weeks before we would get the NGS report. So we thought that let us look at the cytokine which is driving this thrombocytopenia. We did an IL-6 level, it was high. We treated him with IL-6 receptor blocker tocilizumab, and you can see the response. Within the next 72 hours, within the 48 hours itself, the platelets jumped. It stabilized at the end of 1 week. By the end of 2 weeks, it started coming down. We gave another tocilizumab, kept him stable, stopped his bleeding, and then came the NGS report, which was the first case report of STAT3 gain of function from India with polycythemia. This was the twist to the tale. Each STAT3 so far reported gain of function has always been Evans phenotype with autoimmune hemolytic anemia. This is the published data. STAT3 is a huge gene. You can have loss of function and gain of function both in the same gene depending upon where the mutation is. The child was started on JAK inhibitor ruxolitinib because it is the JAK-STAT pathway which is activated underlying the STAT3 mutation, and this is the kind of response which we have seen in the child, and the child is doing pretty well. The changing concept in IEI, the second one is age at onset. It can be childhood or it can have a variable penetrance with no clinical symptoms at all, and even in an adult patient. Now, this is a child who was referred to us from Gujarat. He was a 12-year-old male child who was symptomatic from 10 years of age. He had an Evans phenotype. He had lymphoproliferation, then went on to get diagnosed as an inflammatory bowel disease with a high stool calprotectin. This is his scopy picture. And then when the child came to us, he had metalosis, alopecia areata, and this was enough for us to send an exome sequencing for him, and exome sequencing identified what is called a CTLA4 mutation. It's a tregopathy, T regulatory cell disorder. The mother carries the same mutation and has been asymptomatic till date. They have had a second kid after antenatal workup was done, but she is completely asymptomatic. This child was given abatacept, which is CTLA4 fusion protein, went in for transplant, 6 years post-transplant, doing very well. The changing concept again, IEI with spontaneous improvement, tale of two brothers. This is a child of Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome who presented with eczema, bleed, low platelets, and he has also had a post-auricular ulcer. He has also had an X-ray proven pneumonia. We were expecting Wiskott, and we had a mutation. He had microplatelets on peripheral smear. He had Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, diagnosed again, and we thought that it's time for us to transplant him. He had an elder brother, and elder brother was completely asymptomatic. His CBC was normal. We thought that we still do a Sanger sequencing for him. We did a Sanger sequencing for him, and he was carrying the same mutation. We did a VASP by flow, and he had a double peak. The center of this shows a double peak, and the VASP by flow showed a double peak, which is normal, which is seen in a normal individual like you and me. That is when we did an NGS with an amplicon sequencing. We are looking at the depth. We saw that most of his defective allele had changed into a wild clone or a normal clone. So variant allele frequency of a normal clone was 90%. He had reverted. He had reverted would mean he had a somatic reversion. So it had a subpopulation of cells with wild type, that is normal gene, sequence of protein expression within a patient who otherwise carries a germline mutation. So this is an automatic somatic reversion in a child, but he cannot be used as a donor. So this child was transplanted with unrelated donor. Looking at the phenotypic heterogeneity, not all the patients with the same mutation would present with the same kind of phenotype. I would like to take you through a patient cohort with APDS syndrome who had the same mutation that can be seen here. They had the same mutation. Patients or 6 patients with the same mutation presented with either an SLE phenotype, an EVAN syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease with a family history in one of the child, and EBV associated lymphoproliferation and EBV associated malignancy. It was not just autoimmunity. Look at the infection profile in them. Only hypogammaglobulinemia was seen at diagnosis in 2 of them. Not everybody needs to have an immune defect at the time of diagnosis. This was the first girl with APDS syndrome in our cohort who had nodular lymphoid hyperplasia, who also had an EVAN syndrome, extensive bronchiectasis. We started her on leniolisib, but we lost her subsequently because parents did not want to transplant her. A boy who presented with EVAN syndrome initially went on to get diagnosed as an SLE because he fulfilled the Euler criteria, but the rheumatologist referred the child to us mainly because he had developed alopecia areata and keratoconjunctivitis sicca. Polyautoimmunity is an inborn error of immunity unless proved otherwise. He was a second boy with APDS syndrome. He is now in US. He was transplanted in US because he went for studies there. He went to Dr. Stephen Holland and he has been transplanted there and doing very well. Another 24-year-old guy who was treated as clinic marginal zone lymphoma at Manipal Hospital in Bangalore, but 4 years later recurred. The malignancy recurred. This time there was a lymphadenopathy, initially thought to be a Hodgkin's lymphoma. Dr. Anita Borges reviewed the child and said this is EBV associated lymphoproliferation. Definitely not a malignancy. That is when we decided that we need to send an NGS. When he came to us, he had these chickenpox marks. And when we know that there is a chickenpox and there is an EBV associated malignancy, herpes viridae, they go hand in hand. We sent EBV copies, it was 1.24 lakhs, and we knew that every time he would have a chickenpox, we can see in this graph, he would have EBV viremia as well. This guy was started on therapy. We referred him for allo-BMT, but we lost him before he was transplanted. Hematopoietic versus non-hematopoietic. It is now not bone marrow progenitor restricted. The example of this is a young girl who came to us with extensive wart and turned out to be EVER1 mutation. She could be started on therapy and she is doing pretty well. And this child, very recently seen before I left Mumbai, this child was admitted with recurrent Neisseria infection. We know that complement factor C5 to C9 is responsible for formation of membrane attack complex and has to be there normally functional to kill Neisseria, which is again an intracellular organism. Many more like this can be, this child had a C7 deficiency, many more like this, like HSV encephalitis is secondary to toll-like receptor 3 defect. HSV encephalitis is an inborn error of immunity. It is not by chance. It only causes encephalitis. Fulminant hepatitis A is IL-18 receptor binding protein defect. It cannot be fulminant with hepatitis A. If it is hepatitis A fulminant, it has to be IEI. Coming to genetics of infectious disease, more the norm than exception. These are the arms of the adaptive immune system. This is a paper published by Dr. Casanova in 2005 and was scoffed upon, saying inborn errors of immunity to infection is a rule rather than exception. Over a period of time, Dr. Casanova proved that he has always been right. Inborn errors of type 1 interferon immunity, we were part of this cohort with life-threatening COVID-19. He identified toll-like receptor 9 defects in patients with severe COVID-19. So we know now that there can be susceptibility to EBV, as is seen in this cartoon which is moving. There can be susceptibility to viral warts, as seen in the moving. These are all the genetic defects associated. There can be susceptibility to MMR. I will share a case with you. There can be susceptibility to influenza virus, IRF7. We looked for a genetic mutation in one of the child who came with severe influenza and had to be intubated. We haven't got the mutation. Probably over a period of time, no new genes will get discovered. This child's genetic data has been downloaded, and I will definitely reanalyze in future if new genes gets identified. This is susceptibility to HSV. HSV encephalitis is inborn error of immunity, repeating again and again. We see plenty of them. And susceptibility to hepatitis A, as I told already. So these are the acquired immune defects. These are the T cell defect would present with polymicrobial infection as well as failure to thrive from the very beginning, while the B cell defect or an autoantibody deficiency would usually present with a cyanopulmonary infection and the defect infection by an encapsulated organism, enteroviral infection and recurrent parasitic infections. This is a 40-day-old child. He was born of second-degree consanguineous marriage. She was born of second-degree consanguineous marriage. She was 40 days when she came to us. She had persistent oral and genital candidiasis, had respiratory distress, and was admitted to PICU. ET bal was pneumocystis jirovecii, and she did not have a thymus or confirmed on ultrasound. This is the EP view, so we will not be able to comment on thymus here. She also had influenza A virus and Klebsiella pneumoniae. She had a BCG adenitis and skin rash, which turned out to be AFP positive as well. Bacterial, fungal, viral, mycobacterial, with severe lymphopenia, as you can see here. Child is a lymphoid organ. Child has to have more than 3,000 absolute lymphocyte count. So we should always look at absolute lymphocyte count, absolute neutrophil count, and match it with the normogram for age. We shouldn't have missed this child. This child came to us pretty late and could not be transplanted. Another child, I don't want to go on to the history. This was an ADA deficiency child which can be picked up only on X-ray and CBC. Look at the lymphopenia the child has. The child has got actually a pancytopenia, sort of pancytopenia, and the child has this classical X-ray marking. There is a scapular squaring, there is a scapular spurring, and there is costochondral cupping. These are classical X-ray features of ADA SCID. ADA SCID will come with pancytopenia, severe lymphopenia and neutropenia as well, because it has an effect on the bone marrow, and it has its ADA is present almost everywhere. It's a ubiquitous gene, it's a ubiquitous protein, and the child will have these classical features. This is a 9-year-old boy who was referred from Tata Memorial Hospital because he had EBV associated Hodgkin's lymphoma. But when he came to us, he had viral warts, he had ichthyosis, he had scarring varicella zoster history, and he had a CMV pneumonia before the start of chemotherapy, because of which he was referred to us. Whenever somebody comes to us like this, we need to investigate them. His lymphopenia was a persistent one. When we looked at his past CVC, he has had recurrent infection, turned out to be hypomorphic SCID, RAC2 mutation. His lymphoma was treated and he was transplanted. This is from one of our published literature. We published 17 cases with ROC8 mutation. 2-year-old child, history of sibling loss to complications of varicella zoster. He was referred by dermatologist because this child has had recurrent infections for which he was admitted. There was Candida tropicalis and Pseudomonas on culture. He had Pseudomonas aeruginosa on CSOM culture, and he had extensive molluscum contagiosum. When we look at his CBC, you can see that an absolute eosinophil count, which is on the higher side. When you have a child who comes to you with a high absolute eosinophil count, and the child also has got a high IgE with molluscum contagiosum and polymicrobial infection, it is ROC8 immune deficiency syndrome. It's an autosomal recessive disease, again a form of hyper IgE, but this is autosomal recessive. Molluscum contagiosum is a disease-defining illness in ROC8. So these are the organisms that are seen with a T cell defect. Now this child, who was referred from Uttar Pradesh. She's a 2-year-old child. She got admitted with respiratory distress. She has had a history of recurrent pneumonias, and She was having skin lesions since infancy. Absolutely normal. She's sitting in the OPD with the kind of abscess you can see here. Look at the abscess. She's sitting normally. We did an X-ray and there was a pneumatocele already. But still she was waiting for her turn in the OPD. We know these are the children with autosomal dominant loss of function. Dominant negative STAT3. STAT3 loss of function. We saw STAT3 gain of function. This is dominant negative STAT3 loss of function mutation. They also will have high AAC. They also will have high IgE. They are Job syndrome that we commonly call. This is our cohort of Job syndrome. They have classical facial features. You can actually recognize them with the help of the facial features, that is a depressed nasal bridge, furrow, tongue. They have a hyperextensibility of the joints. A child would come with an abscess, would sit through the OPD. He can have a dermatophytosis, clubbing. They can have autoimmunity as well, and retained primary dentition, which is very, very important. They can come with Arnold-Chiari malformations, kyphoscoliosis, because connective tissue is also affected. We can transplant them. Bone marrow problems can be sorted. Infections can come under control. The connective tissue disorders and other malformations would remain. So this is the kind of polymicrobial infection we see with autosomal recessive and autosomal dominant, and we know that each of them is unique. It is one gene, one phenotype. This is a boy who was referred from Vadodara, who has had history of recurrent oral thrush, recurrent respiratory tract infections, chickenpox, so bacterial, viral, bronchopneumonia. He started with ASOM, went on to develop severe otitis externa, which was Proteus mirabilis as well as Pseudomonas positive. He had a history of sibling death at around 3 years of age with recurrent bacterial and fungal infections. When we look at a CBC, the CBC, we can always ask, is this a primary immune deficiency? No, because absolute lymphocyte count is normal. But we should not stop at that, do an immunoglobulin profile at least, and we see that what we see here is a hyper IgM phenotype, where both G and A are on the lower side, M is either normal or high. This is hyper IgM syndrome. We turned out to be CD40 ligand deficiency, both males affected. Hyper IgM can present as recurrent psoas sepsis as seen in this 2.5-year-old child, otherwise absolutely normal till the time he presented to us. He also had hyper IgM phenotype, turned out to be CD40 deficiency. This will present like B cell defect. So B cell defect is encapsulated bacteria, enterovirus and parasites. This boy was symptomatic at 7 months. He had diarrhea with Campylobacter jejuni and on stool culture. His elder brother had H. influenzae meningitis and had passed away, though he was immunized for age. This boy later presented to us with a E. coli meningitis. He had normal absolute lymphocyte count when you see, but his globulin was low. The only thing which we can identify, when you examine these children, they have absence of tonsils or a very small tonsil. Child is a lymphoid organ. You have to have lymph nodes. You don't have lymph nodes, you need to do at least a immunoglobulin level, or at least look at the globulin. The globulin was low. We did an immunoglobulin level. It is pan-hypogammaglobulinemia with 0 B cells. This is X-linked A-gamma-globulinemia. IVIG will not come for mucosal immunity to them. They will continue to have bronchiectasis. They will continue to have parasitic infestation. They can develop enteroviral meningitis also. This is our cohort who had, in spite of IVIG, many other structural problems secondary to infections, because IgG alone cannot confirm mucosal immunity. This boy with a knee joint swelling was a ureaplasma urealyticum infection, but he was being treated as monogenic arthritis. Absent tonsils is seen here. A 34-year-old male. Is it only restricted to the child? Not exactly. So 34-year-old male who had recurrent Giardia infection, he was admitted with hypokalemic quadriparesis, found to have hypogammaglobulinemia with hypoalbuminemia, diagnosed as a case of common variable immune deficiency. His immunoglobulin levels were low. At least 2 of them should be low to call them a CDID. There is no need to diagnose or look for a monogenic error before you start the patient on IVIG. 25% alone have monogenic error. Most of them need to be treated with IVIG, have to be started on prophylaxis so that they can have less comorbidities. So if there is a defect from bone marrow to a B cell, you can have what is called as XLA or autosomal recessive A gamma. If the defect is from B cell to the plasma cell, it is common variable immune deficiency. If the class switching is defective, we have what is called as hyper IgM syndrome. So what have we learned out of all this? One gene can have multiple phenotypes. We must always look at absolute counts. No live vaccines for any child where you suspect immune deficiency. Don't give BCG, don't give OPV. Please don't give rotavirus also till we have a diagnosis in hand. Always investigate for disseminated BCG when you have a infection with rotavirus. In addition to CMV, other respiratory viruses, adenoviruses, bacteria, and fungi also need to be looked at. BCG is inherently resistant to pyrazinamide, alter the AKT. Only irradiated blood and blood products. Delayed diagnosis is often associated with autoimmunity, malignancy, and autoinflammation as well. Coming to innate immunity, the phagocytes, they can present with gingivostomatitis, lymphadenitis, we will come to them. Common microorganisms are catalase positive organisms, we need to remember. And they also have risk of cancer. Complement system can present with autoimmunity as well. They are also affected by encapsulated bacteria. A 5-month-old child, seemingly well child with normal CRP, but the kind of pneumonia which the child has turned out to be streptococcal pneumonia. Always remember, monogenic error can be found in such patients, turned out to be IRAK4 mutation. This was our first case of IRAK4 mutation. The best thing is they improve over time. This child is 8 years of age now without any symptoms. So there are happy things or happy endings also. Streptococcus pneumoniae, Staph aureus, gram negative as well as Mycobacterium avium can affect them. Polymorphonuclear response to invading organism. We can see that if the polymorph cannot undergo diapedesis, when it comes out of the blood vessel, it can cause LAD. If the recognition is defective, we have something called lazy leukocyte syndrome. If the phagocytosis occurs but the respiratory burst is poor, we have chronic granulomatous disease. And if the granule release is defective, as in case of an alien gene mutation or severe congenital neutropenia, it is primary granule deficiency. So this is a child who was admitted with us on day 28 of life with leukemoid reaction and with IV site infection. Culture was Acinetobacter and Sternotrophomonas. CSF culture was Pseudomonas aeruginosa. The most important history is delayed cord fall or mumphiolitis with leukemoid reaction. LAD patients can be transplanted and this child is doing well post-transplant. This is from Dr. Shivakumar, Masonic Hospital, a child who was referred with fever, respiratory tract infection, was irritable, had a mild wheeze and hepatosplenomegaly of almost 5 days duration. There was no history of delayed cord fall. There is no history of any other recurrent infection. BCG scar was prominent. There was no adenitis, no rash. Pretty irritable child. They identified that there was a perianal ulcer which was responsible for this, and the swab was E. coli, which was pan-sensitive. The child was started on treatment, but the child was not improving. Dr. Shiva sat down and meticulously tabulated the CBC, and you can see that there is a cyclicity of neutrophils in this patient on CBC trend. We need to do this. If we don't do this, we will not diagnose. Bone marrow aspiration was no maturation arrest. But when you do a bone marrow aspiration, take out sample for bone marrow biopsy, because it showed mature myeloid cells were markedly reduced, eosinophilia and a hypocellular marrow, suspected a severe congenital neutropenia, started the child on injection GCSF, and we got the mutation as Elaine. The child has been referred to Dr. Ajita for transplantation. Doing pretty well on GCSF right now. A very interesting case, a 12-year-old who was treated for an abdominal tuberculosis, and she had, in spite of having stopped the anti-tubercular drug, she continued to have leukopenia and therefore was referred by Dr. Gira Shah to Dr. Mukesh Desai. And you can see that leukopenia is there, but what is very important is monocytosis. When you have a monocytosis, leukopenia, and as you see here, she had cafe au lait spot, we know, and Mycobacterium tuberculosis infection. We know that this can be something associated with what is called as GATA2 mutation. Is a very telltale picture. We did a bone marrow aspiration which showed monosomy 7, and we started looking for all the mutations associated with monosomy 7 and AX infected. It was GATA2. She's transplanted and doing well. If we wouldn't have picked her up, she would have gone on to develop a severe AML and probably we would have lost her. She also had a driver mutation for AML. So these are the protean manifestations of GATA2. They can come with vasculitis as well. They can come with autoimmunity, infections. So there's no end. We just need to think out of the box with all the patients who come to us again and again. These are the molecular mechanisms of severe congenital neutropenia. Depending upon which organelle is affected, we have to keep the neutrophil count at a higher level so that the child remains asymptomatic. Why molecular diagnosis is important? A 39-year-old medical professional and anesthetist who has had recurrent oral ulcers since childhood and has been operated for an ASD at 2 years of age. Now he presented with fatigue and exertional dyspnea and his CBC showed pancytopenia. He has had neutropenia on looking at all his CBCs in the past, and the neutrophil count has been varying only between 700 to 1400 on various occasions. Bone marrow aspiration and cytogenetics confirmed myelodysplasia, and an NGS was sent. NGS showed G6PC3 mutation. Everywhere, unless we send an NGS, we will not be able to diagnose a mutation. Why this mutation is important? This person could be treated with an anti-diabetic drug, empagliflozin. It's a mechanism which we will discuss sometime later, and he is doing pretty well. It's almost 6 years since he has been diagnosed. His MDS has not progressed, and he is doing very well without any symptoms right now. This is a 3.5-year-old boy with history of 3 pneumonias in 3 years, treated with AKT, multiple infections, and the cultures have been Pseudomonas, MRSA, and lymphadenopathy. When he was admitted with respiratory distress, he went on to develop a cavitatory lesion in the lung, turned out to be galactomannan positive, granulomas on lymph node biopsy, and you all would have guessed it right. This child has got a NBT, which is less than 1%, and chronic granulomatous disease. It was X-linked. This child is transplanted. Aspergillus in a non-neutropenic setting is CGD, otherwise, unless proved otherwise. So these are the mechanisms. I will not delve into it right now. So these are the catalase positive organisms in phagocytic defect. Coming to a very interesting case. The first case of IL-12RP1 was a BJ Wadia patient. She is now 21 years of age, 19 genes, many phenotypes. This has to be renamed as innate immune response against intracellular organism because Mendelian susceptibility to mycobacterial disease now is a misnomer. All intracellular organisms starting from MTB, NTM, nocardia, cytomegalovirus, candida, malaria, leishmania, histoplasma. Probably I am missing some. A 4-month-old with papular skin rash and PCG adenitis. She had a prominent PCG scar, AFP and gene expert positive on skin punch biopsy. Immune workup was normal, and she turned out to be the first case of interferon gamma receptor defect. She is now 10 years of age, transplanted. She was transplanted with Dr. Revati Raj at Chennai. Disseminated PCGiosis in KIT, chronic granulomatous disease, and mycobacterial, Mendelian susceptibility to mycobacterial disease. 11-year-old boy who had multiple episodes of adenitis, lower respiratory infections, treated for BCGitis at 7 months of age. When he came to us, he had marked per lapellor, he was cachexic, and the lymph nodes, which we can see here, were taken, the photograph was taken after he became all right. He had moderate hepatosplenomegaly, a lesion which was developing in the lung, and the BAR culture and the lymph node culture showed non-typhoidal salmonella. When you have non-typhoidal salmonella, which is intracellular organism, we sent an exome sequencing and he turned out to be IL-12RP1 defect. He responded beautifully to treatment. He went home, came back again, this is generalized tonic-clonic convulsion with an abscess. The abscess, looking at the MRI and the CT scan, looked like a nocardia. The abscess proved to be nocardia, pneumonia on Malditov. He was started on appropriate antibiotics, but since this was a long-standing episode, we started him on interferon alpha-2b because interferon gamma is not available in India. We started giving him every week. He's doing excellently. Now he is on once a month interferon alpha-2b because interferon gamma is required to take care of intracellular organism. If you don't have, we substitute with interferon alpha-2b. a child with Mycobacterium avium intracellular skin infection, and this child also had lymphedema, also developed an osteomyelitis of the knee joint, and she had multifocal bone tuberculosis subsequently. Turned out to be a partial dominant interferon gamma receptor defect. Bone involvement is partial dominant interferon gamma receptor defect. Organism is nocardia, non-tubercular mycobacteria. It is very, very easy. It's very easy to diagnose. Disseminated vaccine strain measles infection post-MMR. Is it an inborn error of immunity? This child came to GKNM hospital. They came from Darapuram. The first child at 9 months of age received measles vaccination, and the child post-measles, day 15, developed a fever, rash, status epilepticus, and the death certificate mentions it as viral meningoencephalitis. I didn't have any other report to pursue. The second born, parents decided not to give MMR vaccination. At 14 months, when ANM visited their house, the child was vaccinated with MMR, and the second child had a similar course. The third child was now 7 months. This is a female child, but the parents were skeptical as to what is happening to this child, what would happen to this child rather. And this child turned out to be interferon gamma alpha receptor 1 defect on NGS. They are susceptible to vaccine strain measles as well as wild type measles infection in the community. So this child has got interferon alpha receptor 1 defect. So vaccination itself can cause disseminated measles. They are susceptible to yellow fever vaccination also. So there has been a paradigm shift in viewing an IEI. I repeat, TLR3 defect is herpes simplex encephalitis. IRF7 is severe influenza. These are the things which we see most of the time. Card-level MART1, BCL10 is recurrent TCT pneumonia. And rest of the things are there. XLP1, EBV virus, male child, HLH CDID is X-linked lymphoproliferative syndrome. Is it associated with immune dysregulation also? Yes. This is our cohort of patients, 60 patients who presented to BJ-RDR with immune dysregulation, autoimmunity in various forms. PID syndromes that are associated with autoimmune manifestations based on the pathophysiology is showed in this picture. But this is a picture where there were total 21 patients who had mutations in tregopathy genes, T regulatory defects, and non-PIRD genes, that the genes which are not responsible for immune dysregulation but still had autoimmunity. The commonest among them was APDS syndrome, and the commonest among tregopathy is LRPA syndrome. So these are the mutated genes that affect Treg function and symptoms. Common to most of the diseases are eczema, infections, multi-organ polyautoimmunity, and they would present at any time in life, early in life to late in life. 41-year-old GKNMH patient, 38 kgs at present, recurrent lower respiratory tract infections, treated for COGS twice. Look at his infectology. He has had pseudomonas on bar, strep pneumoniae with bronchopneumonia and effusion. H1N1 influenza requiring ICU care, H. pylori with chronic gastritis, and chronic diarrhea with Giardia and Campylobacter jejuni. This is enough for us to send an NGS. He was being treated as pan-hypoglobulinemia. His LSSA was not done. IVIG prophylaxis was going on, but no drug prophylaxis was given to him. He reached Dr. Rajita. She sent exome sequencing, and this is likely pathogenic IKBKB mutation that is responsible for gain of function. And this can present as a CVID and later on develop a nodular regenerative hyperplasia in the liver, causing hepatic fibrosis and portal hypertension. So by the time he reached us, it was too late. We cannot transplant him. Otherwise, he could have got transplanted way back. CVID phenotype in a 24-year-old who had an inflammatory bowel disease to present with, but when he was admitted in VICU with severe pneumonia, he was referred to us, turned out to be ICOS-L mutation. And this boy, since he had a CVID phenotype, and I recently learned that he has been transplanted as well because he developed other autoimmunities as well. So this is monogenic inborn errors of immunity in adults cohort, as we have seen at Vadia Children's Hospital. No table is left behind in this. All the IUIS classification tables are also seen in adult. Very easy to diagnose. That is why this case has been put forward This is IPEX syndrome, a 16-month-old who presented in a cachexia stage with inflammatory bowel disease. His stool calprotectin was high. Immunoglobulin IgE was normal. So here we have seen that the child has got the immune dysregulation in the form of an enteropathy. His thyroid dysfunction, he had thyroid dysfunction. His urine protein creatinine ratio was high, and he had an hypocomplementemia. So it shows immune dysregulation, polyendocrinopathy, enteropathy. And the child has a high IgE called as, and is a male child, IPEX syndrome. So this is very, very easy to diagnose, turned out to be FOXP3 mutation. He has been transplanted. The first case of CD25 deficiency in type 1 diabetes mellitus child diagnosed at 1 month of age. Those were the times when Dr. Sudha Rao would send neonatal diabetes exome sequencing to Exeter Medical School, England. Turned out to be IL-2 receptor alpha or CD25 deficiency. She was transplanted when our transplant unit started. Her diabetes is the only thing that she has right now. All other autoimmunities have gone away. Furthermore, defects in the intrinsic and innate immunity. You can have predisposition to chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis. A boy who was symptomatic since 10 years of age with herpes zoster, tuberculum meningoencephalitis, oral candidiasis, onychomycosis, pneumonias because of bacterial infection. And by the time he came to us, he had lymphopenias and turned out to be what is called a STAT1 gain of function mutation, responsible for CMCC, chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis disease, but is also associated with non-fungal infections, autoimmunity, aneurysms, and malignancy. During the COVID time, he developed a gangrene, septicemia, and succumbed at home. This is the contribution which we have made to STAT1 gain of function mutation cohort internationally and published. These children can be treated. So it's not that this boy we lost. We have 11 more STAT1 gain of function who are on baricitinib and doing very well. 15-year-old male diagnosed as a case of CVID at Madras Medical College Hospital and started on IVIG. He was admitted with a pyrexia of unknown origin with an organomegaly and pancytopenia. HLH workup was positive. He had high ferritin, low fibrinogen, and hemophagocytes on the bone marrow. He already had bronchiectasis at the time of admission. Male, HLH. We have to, at the CVID phenotype, we have to look at EBV copies. The EBV copies were 1.42 lakhs. This is EBV associated HLH, and he turned out to be X-linked lymphoproliferative syndrome. I sent out of my own pocket just to diagnose this child. We lost the child, but we have the diagnosis, and antenatal diagnosis can be offered to the parents or the siblings of the parents. 2-year-old with a classical Griscelli syndrome, silvery hair, absent pigmentation on the low power microscopy, and presented with an HLH. She could be transplanted and salvaged. FAT27 alpha is the mutation. Therapies for PID with autoimmune disease. We have multiple. We have better therapies. We can be targeted. It's not the doomsday. It's not the end of life. And we know that all of these patients, when diagnosed at the right time, can be treated adequately either with an mTOR inhibitor or a JAK-STAT pathway inhibitor or leniolisib or idialisib, or they can be treated with abatacept, which can act as a bridge to transplant, and the patient can be transplanted. We can have JAK inhibitors treating these patients as well. So ultimately, it depends upon the pathophysiological process driving the disease, and that needs to be targeted. So targeted drug therapy is more important rather than blankly starting the child on something like an MMF, something like a rituximab. We need to target. If there is no B-cell involvement, rituximab is of no use. Monomers of immunity underlie autoinflammation also. A very interesting child who's 4.5 years of age, who had unprovoked seizure. He went on to develop a paraplegia, subsequently was admitted with an Evans syndrome with us, and he had a gross motor delay as well, but mentally he was sound. This is the first time we saw him. So somebody who had status and then a paraplegia and now an Evans syndrome. We thought we might as well do a skeletal survey, and skeletal survey showed platyspondyle and metaphyseal dysplasia, metaphyseal dysplasia, Evans syndrome, and involvement of CNS and we knew what is coming. And it was ACP5 as expected. This is called spondyloenchondral dysplasia with immune dysregulation. Why is it important? We started the child on JAK inhibitor because it is an interferonopathy and the child can now walk, he can climb stairs as shown here. So this is very, very important. Target the pathway and we can have a normal child. 16-year-old, history of photosensitivity, which was responsive to steroids. She has had recurrent infections in the form of otitis media, oral ulcers, rash over the face and body. This was an SLE with discoid lesions. Her ANA was positive, anti-DS DNA was also positive. She had a very strong family history. Therefore, we sent an exome sequencing for this child. Turned out to be C1q deficiency. This was Dr. Sagar Bhattad's patient and he has transplanted this girl and she is doing pretty well. Interesting case, only 12 people in the world have this kind of a mutation. So I would like to go ahead with this case. 4-year-old male child who presented to us with recurrent skin abscesses and was also diagnosed as a case of a steroid responsive nephrotic syndrome. Steroids did not ameliorate the recurrent episodes of periodic fever which he has had. Father was also a very thin built guy who has had multiple adenopathies and skin infections as well. Grandmother, as we have seen here, as we are seeing here, had died at early age, 37 years of age with renal failure. That's enough to tell us that we are probably dealing with an autosomal dominant disease with anticipation. So we actually sent us exome sequencing somewhere in May 2019. That time it was not an exome, it was an PID and a autoinflammatory panel. We did not get anything there. We started the child on colchicine, also started the father on colchicine. The periodic fever reduced, they started doing well. We charted IL-6 and amyloid A protein just to see if the disease is worsening. And we repeated the mutation again somewhere when the child was 4.5 years of age. This is somewhere in 2020 was COVID and we probably repeated it in 2021, Jan 2021. Diagnosed case of cleavage-resistant RIPK1 induced autoinflammatory syndrome or CRIA syndrome. We have only 12 cases in the world. 4 of them are ours. So we need to repeat the exome sequencing over a period of time because new genes get discovered. That's because Dr. Dan Kastner, we lost him 3 weeks back on a Sunday. And Dr. Dan Kastner could identify this gene, but because of the COVID, he could not validate his diagnosis and therefore he had to wait till the COVID got over. October 21 was the validation done, published in December. January we sent the mutation and we have the diagnosis. Spectrum of EBV cohort from India, this was a single center experience, is malignancy and inborn error of immunity. We always say this, yes, if it is associated with Epstein-Barr virus. This is a cohort of children who are referred to us from Tata Memorial and our center as well, who had malignancies at the time when there was an atypical site or therefore an unusual age of malignancy. It was refractory disease. They had unusual organism causing life-threatening infections during the chemotherapy. Post-chemo hypogammaglobulinemia was noticed in them. There was family history too in them. There was past history of recurrent infection and EBV signature was positive. 1 to 10 years was the age when they came to us, which is unlike West. West, it is 2nd decade or 3rd decade of life. Our kids come early. Monogenic error. These are the type of Hodgkin's lymphoma malignancies which came to us where we look for monogenic errors. And Hodgkin's lymphoma, 66% had monogenic error and 85% of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma had monogenic error. I firmly believe malignancy is driven by a monogenic error and we need to look for it because if we target the pathway, malignancy can be controlled. Very interesting case, treated with a very simple drug. He came to us, a healthy child, absolutely healthy child with extensive molluscum contagiosum. And when he came to us, he was otherwise okay. We didn't know what we were dealing with. We sent an exome sequencing for him because we believe molluscum contagiosum is an inborn error of immunity. You cannot have it by chance. When we sent it, we saw that he has got X-Men syndrome, no other infection. We just started him on magnesium threonate and this child is absolutely all right. It is published now and he is doing well. So magnesium threonate is 160 rupees available on Amazon and the child is doing on 1 capsule per day. What are the workup for patients with one error of immunity? Nothing surpasses good history. Nothing surpasses good history. CBC can guide us to diagnosis because we can pick up lymphocyte, absolute lymphopenia, absolute neutropenia on CBC. Serum globulin can guide us to identify if there can be a low immunoglobulins as well. Immunoglobulin profile can aid the diagnosis of many inborn errors of immunity, but should be done only after 4 months of age. LSSA extended is preferred because basic LSSA is not going to tell us about the functionality of T and B cell subsets. NBT-DHR is something that is available at GKNM and can diagnose a case of chronic granulomatous disease. Whole exome sequencing result is based on the phenotype that you give. If you don't give adequate phenotype, the diagnosis can be missed. What are the improving therapeutics in inborn errors of immunity? We know now that the treatment is based not just on supportive intervention, but we have cellular therapy in the form of hematopoietic stem cell transplantation. We can do a gene therapy, which is of course not available in India, but there are precision medicines which can be targeted, as I had told previously. The various infections and what we can target them with. This is the exhaustive IUIS classification. This is something which is a 2 expert guided scoring systems for identifying inborn errors of immunity in a child and adult. The only 4 basic things, there were 27 warning signs. With these 4 basic warning signs, that is sufficient to identify inborn errors of immunity. So clinical history, family history, and examination findings are important clues to the diagnosis of inborn errors of immunity, especially with consanguinity. Infection with unusual organism, unusual site, unusual duration needs to be probed. Persistent lymphoproliferation and autoimmunity definitely needs probing. Basic investigations like CBC, XHS, organism can be a guide to the next step. EBV copies may be low, but tissue residence can be high. Autoinflammation is usually sterile periodic fever. Sterile periodic fever also needs to be probed. Recurrent malignancy needs to be looked for in inborn errors of immunity. Early diagnosis and administration of targeted therapy or referral for HSCT is important to reduce the disease burden. Principles to follow: go beyond the immediate diagnosis, keep asking why, have a plausible pathophysiology, how, what is the process. That's very, very important. Genetics of infectious disease is a norm, is rather than exception. Patients don't read our books and come. They can come with whatever phenotype they want to come with. Not everything about the disease is known. Phenocopies of the disease like anti-interferon gamma autoantibody causing tuberculosis, factor VIII antibody causing acquired hemophilia, anti-GM-CSF antibody causing disseminated cryptosporidium infections. We have a patient referred by Dr. Vijay who has cryptosporidium infection. I need to send the sample to Dr. Stephen Holland for looking for anti-GM-CSF antibody. Human inborn errors of immunity, there are 559 genetic defects. There can be autosomal dominant or recessive, X-linked or somatic. Penetrance can be complete or it can be incomplete. There are phenocopies. Incidence is 1 in 1,200 in India. That means 10 lakh undiagnosed cases in India. We all stand on the shoulder of giants. Dr. Zanet Karim Boy started this inborn error of immunity department, Vijay Wadia Hospital, putting 25 lakh rupees from her own pocket to start this department. It has been carried forward by Dr. Mukesh Desai, my mentor, and whatever I have spoken here is because of my learning from what I was taught and what I saw. And all the credit goes to my teachers and my mentors and my patients, parents, my department, and the hospitals in Coimbatore to which I am attached, and the colleagues who have been referring cases and discussing cases with me. There's still a lot to learn. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention.
would like to express on behalf of Masani Children's Hospital and everyone gathered here our sincere appreciation and heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Vijaya Gauri for a truly enlightening and inspiring.
Was a vote of thanks on the special occasion of Professor Raihan Endowment Oration. First and foremost, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Vijaya Gauri ma'am, pediatric immunologist, for graciously accepting our invitation and being with us today.